bringing you a southern perspective on books, movies, music, and much, much more. Stick around for a while, you just might hear something wicked.
Good evening again, friends. I'm sorry I didn't make it on Friday or make up yesterday. I had some unexpected visitors yesterday and Friday, as I had let you know Thursday. I had a football game to go to, and it was my son's senior night, so I had a good time. They won the game. Everything went off without a hitch, and there weren't any injuries, so that was a wonderful thing. Tonight, let me change my screen real quick. I might have to go to break unexpectedly, because as you can see right here, the kitty that is on the couch right there, we think that she might be going into labor. So if I say I'll be right back in the middle of a reading, that will be what's going on, and I will get right back to you as soon as we know something. So I'm making up for Friday's read, and we will be covering tonight the new book of Etiquette, completely revised edition, including notes for an epicure, the traditions and service of wines and other beverages, by Lillian Eichler. It was a Garden City publishing from Garden City, New York, and it was copyrighted in 1924. So let's jump right into it. There are many conflicting opinions as to the origin of the word etiquette. Some authorities believe that it is derived from the Greek stichos, which means order, rank. Others are of the opinion, which originally referred to the stamp or ticket attached to the outside of a parcel or document to indicate its contents. Still, others claim for the word etiquette a French origin, but whatever its derivation, we know that its modern usage, etiquette, connotes those niceties of behavior which stamp one as well-bred. One of the chief distinctions between anarchy and a social organization is that society has worked out for itself various rules of behavior for all phases of human activity. Phases of human activity: social and business intercourse, dining, dressing, correspondence, etc. The well-bred person must understand the requirements of his social order and be able to put them into practice with grace, ease, and poise. Good manners are not only indispensable in society, but they have a very practical value in the business world. Breeding is an essential part of the equipment of anyone who wishes to go far in his particular work or profession. No doubt many failures can be traced to boorishness, to lack of consideration for one's fellow, to neglect of the courtesies essential to civilized living. Etiquette, however, is far more than a formal and superficial observance of social customs. It is something deep-rooted in the nature of a person. As Goethe said, there is no outward sign of courtesy that does not rest on a deep moral foundation. Courtesy must be an instinctive part of one's personality before one can be adjudged well-bred. However, it must be remembered that the external manifestations of that instinct vary from decade to decade. Just as words die from our language and others are born into it, just as skirts soar to the knees one season and tumble to the ankles the next, so do the formalities and the outward gestures of etiquette vary according to the times, although the spirit of etiquette remain always essentially the same. The expression of etiquette, the rules of conduct which govern social life and our associations with one another, is forever adjusting itself to new conditions. It is for this reason that Lillian Eichler has revised and brought up to date her eminently successful volume on etiquette, and she has succeeded splendidly in her work. For reason and common sense guide to Miss Eichler in her writing, and she has looked more to the temper of the times than to the echo of old traditions. As a result, she has produced a truly modern, thoroughly practical, and sanely balanced book. Miss Eichler has, I believe, gone far more deeply into the subject than the average writer on etiquette, realizing that good form is not merely a superficial matter of saying, "Excuse me, please," rather than "Get out of my way," or using all the fingers when holding a glass instead of extending the little finger in the general direction of the stars. She has written comprehensively of the culture and background which are part of the complete man and which form the stage upon which his manners show to the best advantage. It is this emphasis upon education and culture, rather than mere memorizing of correct rules of conduct, which makes Miss Eichler's new book of etiquette unique in its field, and highly valuable to those who take this important matter of manners and breeding seriously. Nor can mention of the author's writing ability to be neglected. Miss Eichler's grace and fluency of style make her book thoroughly readable and delightful. Fortunately, too, the author possesses a wide knowledge of the evolution of the customs of mankind through the ages, and the incorporation of much of this material not only increases the reader's interest, but lends a historical value to the volume. In the State Archives at Washington, D.C., there is preserved, in the handwriting of George Washington, an interesting manuscript book containing, among other exercises, a list of rules of behavior. This book bears the date of 1745, and was written when Washington was a boy of 15. There are many rules for what the boy, who was later to become the father of his country, considered to be decent behavior in the company and conversation. But of all young Washington's rules, perhaps the most notable is, labor to keep alive in your breast that little spark of celestial fire called conscience. It is remarkable that a boy of 15 should have gone so quickly, so surely, to the heart of all etiquette. Without a conscience, your social relations must, eventually, be unsatisfactory. But but if you possess that little spark of celestial fire called conscience, and listen to its dictates, you possess the most important single element which goes to make up the well-bred person. Part 1. The basic fundamentals. There is always a best way of doing everything. Manners are the happy way of doing things. Each once a stroke of genius or of love, now repeated and hardened into usage, they form at last a rich varnish with which the routine of life is washed and its details adorned. If they are superficial, so are the dewdrops that give such a depth to the morning meadows. Emerson. 1. The dawn and development of social life. The earliest human relationship. Man woke to life in a strange and terrifying world. There were snakes of fire that zigzagged through the sky, sudden crashes of thunder that rocked the earth. Great furry beasts stood tall as the trees, and the jungle hummed with many ominous voices. Even silent mountains came suddenly to life and coughed flame into the sky. Alone and frightened, man struggled through the first brief span of life. He saw danger lurking everywhere around him. The night sky winked at him with a million tiny eyes. The sun seemed a ball of fire that laughed at his efforts to reach it. His very shadow seemed a ghost-like memory that stalked at his side. Cradled thus in a world of hostility, man knew fear. And so fear was that first instinct, definitely to influence the habits of life. More than anything else, perhaps man feared his own kind. He kept as much as possible out of the way of the strange, hairy creatures that, like himself, prowled the plains and jungles in search of food. Man was easy prey to man in those days, and food was often scarce. It became one of the first habits of life to carry a crude club as a weapon. A pair of savages meet at the fringe of some forest. Both are hungry, and both smell food. They growl and hold their ground. They growl again and raise their clubs. In a moment they are upon each other, wild as angered beasts, flying simply because they fear and distrust each other. William J. Fielding, writing of our caveman heritage, says that before we are able to reason, before we are able to love or hate or comprehend, we are able to be afraid. You have probably noticed that the first emotions of a child are fear and surprise, and so it was with man at the dawn of life. He felt long before he reasoned. He feared whatever he could not comprehend. For one long age he lived a life within himself, searching for food when he was hungry, finding a sleeping place when he was tired, hiding in caves and crevices when the earth was rocked by storms. Cautious and alone, he lived each little life from dawn to dark, an infant in the world already old. Instinct and impulse. Fear, then, bred in man an instinctive avoidance of his fellows. But let us turn a page or two in the book of life. Man is beginning to reason. The tiny shaft of light that is to separate mankind forever from the lower animals is gradually widening, penetrating even to this remote age, and bringing to man, as he struggles on the threshold of life, a beam of understanding. We watch again as two savage men of this later age meet at the fringe of the forest. Both are well fed. Neither is particularly frightened. They eye each other carefully for a moment, make a wide circuit, and disappear in opposite directions. Or perhaps they come upon a great beast of the jungle, both at the same time. Instantly and without a murmur, they fall upon it, and between them kill it with little trouble. Sudden impulse drew them together, made them partners for a moment, and reason spoke within them. Two could kill a beast more quickly than and with less trouble than one. Why not be friends instead of enemies? This occurred not to one man, but to many men in widely separated places. It became a habit of life when one savage fellow met another with whom he wished to be friendly, to extend the bare right hand, the weapon hand, as a sign of friendliness. The other fellow would understand, for symbolism is the simplest and most universal language of mankind. Instead of fighting, they would join forces. They would hunt together, perhaps live together. From this first crude symbol of friendliness evolved the handshake, which is even today an instinctive expression of welcome. The impulse that drew man to man in time of mutual danger was the first thread in the pattern of social relationship. It satisfied a hunger that earth alone could not satisfy. Man looked at man, and a radical sympathy was born. He saw hair that looked like his own, teeth like his own teeth, a body like his own body, and he wanted to share with this creature like himself the fears and joys and wonders of his daily life. He wanted the other fellow to know of his great strength. He wanted to show him the bear he had killed in the jungle, the woman he had dragged to his cave. So far back in the dawn of human life, man moved closer to man. A slumbering social instinct was awakened. How nature taught man companionship. Man gradually became accustomed to the world in which he found himself. He began to explain the rain and thunder to his own satisfaction. Shadows that trembled on the ground were simply dark selves that came and went as they pleased. The fire-spitting mountains were angry gods to be propitiated. The sun was just a ball of fire that remained up and out of the way as long as one did not bother it. Fear slowly gave way to reason, and man acquired a new ease. He made for himself a clever flint axe and wandered the world like a conqueror. In his new ease, he paused a moment to watch an elderly mother jackal play with her cubs. He grinned at the pair of brown bears rolling gleefully down a slope. He looked into the sky and saw birds riding the wind. He passed through a jungle and heard monkeys jabbering in the treetops. A bush uprooted by some storm swarmed with busy insect life. A bird overhang sang to the wind, and far away another answered the call. There welled in the soul of man an intense loneliness. He began to seek his own kind. Nature taught him companionship. We see everywhere in nature this gathering together of like with like. The bees and the birds seek their kind. A wild violet shoots up near a moss-grown rock, and soon there are many violets growing there. An oak bends its branches towards a sister oak near the lake. Sheep herd together. Wolves gather in packs. Nature has created many separate species and has instilled in each an instinctive liking for its own. The meaning of society. In its broader, finer sense, society means people as a whole, human beings, fellowship. Various external conditions, circumstances of life, have divided society into grades or castes, but society remains fundamentally the same, the whole world of human fellowship to which we all belong. The first primitive existence was devoid of the social element. During the first long stretch of prehistory, man was too vitally concerned with his individual struggle for survival to have had any real social life. But we have seen how the slumbering social instinct has awakened, how man gradually moved closer to his own kind. It is reasonable to suppose that this instinct was present in the man from the very first, but that the hazardous conditions of early life made of man a cautious wanderer before he could be a peaceful clansman. As we follow in the footsteps of man, slowly and painfully developing, we see that it is a series of very natural steps that the society element entered his life. The discovery of flint-tipped spear, for instance, made it possible for man to supply himself with an abundance of food, and with his cave well filled with food, he was not afraid to welcome some wandering fellow and sit with him under the stars. His attitude toward his neighbors began to change. He had plenty of food. Why need they fear each other? We see growing up in the lives of these early men a new influence which tends to bind them closer in social relationship. Filled with a vague unease at the big yellow disk that glows above them, marveling at the millions of silver eyes that blink in the night sky, man comes from the darkness of his cave and squats near the fire for warmth and comfort. Presently, there comes out of the shadows another lonely fellow to join him in the flickering circle of light. Still another wanders close to in his loneliness, and another, until they are gathered there in a group, a social group, if you please. The first crude social gatherings. Slowly, in some localities, more rapidly in others, this custom of gathering silently around the cave fire became a habit, a custom. Man entered definitely upon a social life for the common good. Today, man is so thoroughly a social being that, as Walter Dyer says, if you place him on a desert island with no one to talk to, he is likely to go mad. The beginning of caste consciousness. Since the dawn of social life, certain forces have been constantly at work separating society into classes and dividing each class into many grades. Even in the very beginning, there was a favored class of society, the head clansmen, the distinguished warriors, the wizards and the priests, and the medicine men. They belonged to a sort of charmed circle within the clan, a circle which had its own definite privileges. We can understand how the clan would have originated or gathered around the most powerful and the most widely feared fellow in the vicinity. He became the head clansman, the chief. Let us call him Mr. Strongman. We can see him squatting in his place of importance, proud of his power, disdainful of the weaker men about him. To Mr. Strongman would be brought all food for distribution. To him also would be brought special finds, a curious shell tossed up by the sea, a stone shaped like an animal through some strange freak of nature, a necklace made of human teeth, These possessions belonged to him by right of his leadership. And his possessions, they were absolutely taboo to the others. Just as the mob must always have its leader, just as groups of any kind must always have leadership, society always has some nucleus around which the members of any particular class or grade gather. In primitive society, leadership belonged to Mr. Strongman, since he had more skins than the others, since he was more powerful and more to be feared. He was treated with deference, and the other members of the clan gathered to do him homage. There were, of course, outcasts in this early society. The weak, the sick, the timid, the blind were ostracized, for they hindered rather than helped the clan. We might say they were at the bottom of society. The women, too, were of lower order, for they were separated and had none of the privileges of the clan's favored class. The castes of early society. Caste appears to have had more influence upon our habits of life, upon our manners and customs, than any other one factor. Throughout all the ages of life, caste has been dividing society into different levels or classes, each class with its own established mode of life. We have already witnessed the first appearance of caste within the primitive clan. Here we have our first example of social differentiation. The head clansman has possessions taboo to the others. He has privileges and distinctions enjoyed by no one else within the clan. It did not take very long for an impressive caste system to grow up around the priests, wizards, and magicians of the of the clan. These were the men who pretended to be in direct communications with the unknown, who frightened away the lightning and attracted the rain, who cured all the ills and caused injury to enemies, and for their services they received the best that the clan or the tribe had to offer. Many of these people accumulated vast properties and treasures, and history tells us of our primitive civilizations that grew up around them, lasted a brief span, and disappeared forever. Wealth was probably done more to divide society into castes or classes than anything else. In early life, wealth was measured in flint axes and spears, warm skins, pottery, foods. Later, the standard of wealth was fixed in land property. Kings granted great tracts of land to their favorites, and these favorites became powerful landowners. They had special rights and privileges denied the people who lived on their land. These peasants, or serfs, the tillers of the soil, are at the base of social life and represent the largest and most essential class in the community. They are the people who domesticate the animals, the people who cultivate the land. The artisan class represents another great cross-section of society. These are the craftsmen, the makers of pottery, the weavers, the carpenters. At one time, crafts or professions were hereditary, and no member of a family was permitted to step out of the craft or profession practiced by the rest of the family. To have done so would have been to step out of caste. Religion has divided society into classes. Education has been a tremendous dividing factor. special talents have further tended to separate society. Fashion, environment, political conditions within a country, wars and revolutions, all have had their influence upon social life. It would be tiresome to discuss the many other castes of society and the conditions of life that have helped to divide society into different classes. There have been the soldiery and the seamen, the merchants and the retailers, the servants and the slaves. Countless forces have been molding and shaping society through the ages until today its pattern is all patches and threads, like the crazy quilt handed down from grandmother's day. The foundation of social law. It was within the clan that the first laws of primitive society were formulated. Established rules or conventions were necessary to regulate the rights of the individual within the tribe or clan, and the rights of the clan itself. Wherever men meet and mingle in primitive life or in a polished and complex social scheme like our own, a definite system of laws to govern personal relationship is important. Such laws make human contact more tolerable. They definitely establish the rights of the individual. They remove the obstacles that stand in the way of free and comfortable intercourse. In its primitive state, society was simple, and the machinery of living was crude. But even in this primitive simplicity were definite habits of life, induced by the conditions under which man lived and the circumstances within the clan. The savage who wandered alone with only birds and the beasts for companionship was a creature of instinct and impulse. He followed his likes and his dislikes without thought of anyone but himself. He did precisely as his impulses prompted him. But the clansman was learning restraint. He was learning to stifle his natural instincts. He was a member of a certain social group, and as such was obliged to play the game, was obliged to live in accordance with the habits of life and the rules of conduct formulated within the clan. The highest order of life, the more we find instinct repressed and man recognizing his duties to the people who live with and near him. The habits of life that developed within the clan are primary laws of social life and the fundamentals upon which our own social structures are built. We see forms of obeisance and homage originated to flatter the vanity of the very strong men, the chiefs, the leaders of the clan. We see the spoils of war brought to the land. We see the spoils of war brought to the head clansman for distribution, fair and equal distribution according to the standards of the clan. We see a definite system of sexual taboo, planned as much for protection of the women as for the welfare of the clan. We see a surprising decree of respect and honor towards the aged. We see a regard for the rights and properties of others, first in the clan, then in the tribe, and finally in the community. We find human society gradually developing. The instincts and impulses for the generations moved the souls of men and began to dictate their conduct in social relationship. Customs and habits of life came into being and held the social fabric together. Here we see the foundation of social law, reason taking the place of brute instinct, man gradually learning to conform to custom, to restrain the emotions and impulses of selfish interests. From this rude and simple beginning has grown our complex, smoothly organized, and highly polished routine of living. The great social advances. Climate and the natural conditions of life greatly influence the development of society among various peoples. Where food was scarce, for instance, man ate alone in some corner, like the modern boy with a stick of candy hiding from his playmates. But where food was plentiful and man had no cause to fear his neighbors, the habit of eating together originated. Gradually, the custom of eating leisurely came into being, and eating became a sort of ceremony to be enjoyed with one's fellows. Possibly, the first great social advance centered about the discovery of voice and the use of speech. Articulate speech, no doubt, originated when men began to live together and discovered the need for a definite means of expression, the ability to exchange thoughts and ideas, the joy of being able to express one's hopes and fears and pleasures to others, brought man into closer companionship than ever before. Speech exerted a great influence upon the life of man, upon his habits and customs. It meant for the first time an exchange of ideas and experiences. It bound man to man in social understanding, and therefore it strengthened immeasurably the social instinct. Another great impetus to social life, was the domestication of animals and the use of irrigation in cultivating the soil. The dog appears to have been the first animal to be domesticated. The sheep, ox, camel, and horse followed in quick succession. Man became a herdsman. He began to plow the ground and use it for agriculture. Home came to mean something entirely new. Pride of possession was born, and man emerged in finer mold, dreaming, thinking, hoping, working, recognizing his duties to his family and to society at large. The beginning of writing was another great step forward. The influence of writing upon human thoughts and habits cannot be estimated. Man's experiences no longer died with him. He was able to communicate his thoughts and his ideas to men hundreds of miles away. The social sphere widened. Slowly but surely, writing exerted a magic influence upon the mind of man. Society moved in closer harmony and understanding. The printing press set the mind of mankind free. It made mass thought possible for the first time. What one read before, thousands were now able to share. What was once the privilege of the favored few now became the property of all. School books were printed in quantity and placed within reach of everyone. Presently, the newspaper appeared. The newspaper, which permeates society and leavens it with the modes of thought and aspirations, and thus becomes an organ for the uniting of large masses of individuals into one compact and unanimous body. Many and varied are the forces and conditions that have influenced society in the long ages of life. There have been new elements constantly at work. The social scheme has become more and more complex. Man has realized more and more his duties to man. Each new generation has stepped upon the shoulders of the generation that has gone before. Building a social structure around the civilization has grown. The meaning of modern society. Emerson says that society is on the stage on which manners are shown. If society is the stage, we are the actors, and the history of social life is like a rich mosaic that reflects the many ages through which we have passed. As we have already seen, countless external forces have been molding and shaping society since the time of Mr. Strongman. The long ages of life show our own society in the making, and the whole inspiring story of human progress stretches between the primitive social scheme and our modern complex civilization. Today, the word society, in its fundamental use, still means human beings, the world of fellowship to which we all belong, but it has become associated in the popular mind with class, position, influence, wealth. The word society as we use it today has come to mean best society, as distinguished from other castes or grades of social life. In all ages there has been a best society, a favored class. In early tribal days, the favored class was composed of the head tribesmen, the wizards, magicians, and priests. Later, there were royalty and nobility, always favored classes. In Europe, we find a landed aristocracy, a people belonging to the best society by right of birth. Growing up in America, we find a new moneyed aristocracy, which is not so much a best society as a fashionable society. While the popular acceptance of best society remains the idea of an exclusive society rapidly disappearing. There was a time when the son of a laborer belonged to a definite caste or class from which he could not easily escape. He was as closely linked to his level of society as though a chain bound him there. His father's habits of life were considered the habits of life proper for him. The social sphere in which his family moved was the sphere in which he was expected to move and from which he was not expected to venture. Today, it is possible for the children of the lower classes to acquire the ease and bearing that enable them to mingle with the best society on a footing of social equality. Certain conditions of life, new to the social scheme, are trending to bridge the chasm of caste and bring all grades of society into closer relationship. This is particularly true in the United States. Europe is still tradition bound, but we are a people curiously free from old world notions of what constitutes a gentleman. The frontier days and the influence of pioneering, the mighty flood of immigration and the rapid growth of cities, the rise of industrialism, and the example of democracy all have been great forces for change in American social life. We are even now adjusting ourselves to this change, breaking loose from the old world customs and traditions that tend to accentuate social differences. The very word gentleman has taken on a new significance. Irving Bachiller, sensing this new trend, says, "The true gentleman can no longer live proudly apart and look down upon the crowd out of his conceit and self-approval. He has got to be worthy of our respect. And so the pendulum is swinging back. Society is losing some of its caste consciousness and is tending to become a unit again. In this new society, everyone is welcome who plays the game that happens to have as its main part a set of rules or conventions that governs the conduct of man in social intercourse. It is largely with these rules of the game of life that this book concerns itself, but the true fundamental purpose of this work is to help bring all castes or classes of society into closer harmony and understanding. And that's it for that section, and we shall continue next Friday. So, if you caught episode 1 and you are already aware of the lineup, you know that we will be reading some comedies by the Bard of William Shakespeare. In this particular volume, the first comedy that we have is the Comedy of Errors. Dramatis Personae. Solanus, Duke of Ephesus. Aegeon, a merchant of Syracuse. Antipholus of Ephesus, Antipholus of Syracuse, twin brothers and sons to Aegeon and Amelia, but unknown to each other. Dromio of Ephesus and Dromio of Syracuse, twin brothers and attendants on the two Antipholuses. Balthazar, a merchant. Angelo, a goldsmith. A merchant friend to Antipholus of Syracuse. Pinch, a schoolmaster and a conjurer. Amelia, wife to Aegeon, an abbess at Ephesus. Adriana, wife to Antipholus of Ephesus. Luciana, her sister. Lucy, her servant. Courtesan. Jailer, officers, and other attendants. Scene: Ephesus. Act 1, Scene 1. A hall in the Duke's palace. Aegeus. Proceed, Solanus, to procure my fall, and by the doom of death end woes and all. Duke. Merchant of Syracuse. Plead no more. I am not partial to infringe our laws, the enmity and discord of which of late sprung from the rancorous outrage of your Duke. To merchants are well-dealing countrymen, who wanting gliders to redeem their lives, have sealed his rigorous statutes with their bloods. Exudes all pity from our threatening looks, for since the mortal and intestine jars twixt thy seditions countrymen and us, it hath in solemn synods been decreed, both by the Syracusans and ourselves, to admit no traffic to our adverse towns. Nay more, if any born at Ephesus be seen at any Syracusan marts and fairs, again, if any Syracusan born come to the bay of Ephesus, he dies. His goods confiscate to the Duke's dispose, unless 1,000 marks be levied, to quit the penalty and to ransom him. Thy substance, valued at the highest rate, cannot amount unto 100 marks. Therefore, by law, thou art condemned to die. Aegeus. Yet this my comfort when your words are done. My woes end likewise with the evening sun. Duke. Well, Syracusan, say in brief the cause why thou departest from thy native home, and for what cause thou camest to Ephesus. Aegeus. A heavier task could not have been imposed than I to speak my griefs unspeakable, yet that the world may witness that my end was wrought by nature, not by vile offense. I'll utter what my sorrow gives me leave. In Syracuse I was born, and wed unto a woman happy but for me, and by to me too, had not our hap been had bad. With her I lived in joy, our wealth increased, by prosperous voyages I made, to Epidemium, till my factor's death, and he, great care of goods at random left, drew me from kind embracements of my spouse. From whom my absent was not 6 months, before herself almost at fainting under the pleasing punishment that women bear, had made provision for her following me, and soon and safe arrived where I was. There she had not been long, but she became a joyful mother of 2 goodly sons, and which was strange, the one so like the other, as could not be distinguished but by names. That very hour, and in the selfsame inn, a poor mean woman was delivered of such a burden, male twins, both alike, those for their parents were exceeding poor. I bought and brought up to attend my sons. My wife, not meanly proud of 2 such boys, made daily motions for our home return. Unwilling I agreed. Alas, too soon we came aboard. A league from Epidamnum had we sailed, before the always window-baying deep gave any tragic instance of our harm. But longer did we not retain much hope. For what obscured light the heavens did grant, did but convey unto our fearful minds a doubtful warrant of immediate death, which though myself would gladly have embraced, yet the incessant weeping of my wife, weeping before for what she saw must come, and piteous plaining of the pretty babes that mourned for fashion, ignorant what to fear, forced me to seek delays for them and me, and this it was, for other means was none. The sailors sought for safety by our boat, and left the ship, then sinking rip to us. My wife, more careful for the latter born, had fastened him unto a small spare mast, such as seafaring men provide for storms. To him one of the other twins was bound, whilst I had been like heedful of the other. The children thus disposed, my wife and I fixing our eyes on whom our care was fixed, fastened ourselves at either end of the mast, and floating straight, obedient to the stream, were carried towards Corinth, as we thought. At length the sun, gazing upon the earth, dispersed upon those vapors that offended us, and by the benefit of his wished light, the seas waxed calm, and we discovered 2 ships from far making amain to us, of Corinth that, of Epidaurus this. But ere they came, oh, let me say no more, gather the sequel by that went before. Duke. Nay, forward, old man, do not break off so, for we may pity, though not pardon thee. Aegeus. Oh, had the gods done so, I had not now worthily termed them merciless to us. For ere the ships could meet by twice 5 leagues, we were encountered by a mighty rock, which being violently borne upon, our helpful ship was splitted in the midst, so that, in this unjust divorce of us, fortune had left to both of us alike what to delight in, what to sorrow for, her part, poor soul, seeming as burdened with lesser weight, but not with lesser woe, was carried with more speed before the wind, and in our sight they 3 were taken up by fishermen of Corinth, as we thought. At length another ship had seized on us, and knowing whom it was their hap to save, gave helpful welcome to their shipwrecked guests, and would have reft the fishers of their prey, had not their bark been very slow of sail, and therefore homeward did they bend their course. Thus have you heard me severed from my bliss, that by misfortunes was my life prolonged, to tell sad stories of my own mishaps, Duke, and for the sake of them thou sorrowest for, do me the favour to dilate at full what hath fallen of them and thee till now. Aegeus, my youngest boy, and yet my eldest care, at 18 years became inquisitive after his brother, and importuned me, that his attendant, for his case was like, reft of his brother, but retained his name, might bear him company in the quest of him, whom, whilst I laboured of a love to see, I hazarded the loss of whom I loved. 5 summers I have spent in furthest Greece, roaming clean through the bounds of Asia, and coasting homeward came to Ephesus, hopeless to find, yet loath to leave unsought, or any place that harbours men. But here must end the story of my life, and happy were I in my timely death, could all my travels warrant me they live. Duke, hapless Aegean, whom the fates have marked to bear the extremity of dire mishap. Now trust me, were it not against our laws, against my crown, my oath, my dignity, which princes would they may not disannul, my soul should sue as advocate for thee. But though thou art adjudged to the death, and past sentence may not be recalled, but to our honoured great disparagement, yet will I favour thee in what I can. Therefore, merchant, I'll limit thee this day to seek thy help by beneficial help. Try all the friends thou hast inefficacious, beg thou or borrow to make up the sum, and live. If not, then thou art doomed to die. Jailer, take him into thy custody. Jailer, I will, my lord. Aegeus, hopeless and helpless doth Aegean wind, but to procrastinate his lifeless end. Exeunt. And that was Act 1, Scene 1 of the Comedy of Errors by William Shakespeare. And that is all for tonight. I really hope you enjoyed this episode of Wicked Shizuku's Reviews. You can contact me through Telegram at t.me/Wicked Shizuku's Reviews. Twitter at samlan_toll. And my email address is wickedshizuku@gmail.com. You can also find me at Substack under Wicked Shizuku's Reviews. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Sleep well, and see you next time.